Life is full of demands. The constant tug between career, relationships, and personal well-being can feel overwhelming at times, like you're walking a tightrope. For so many of us, it's not just about surviving the day, it's about figuring out how to truly live, how to show up fully at work, for our families, and for ourselves. But here's the thing, thriving often isn't about pushing harder or doing more. It's about finding alignment, creating a life where the pieces work together instead of pulling you apart. It's about small, meaningful shifts that help you show up authentically with clarity, purpose, and joy. In this deep dive segment, our hosts will help you explore the breadth of this approach with relevant and practical applications in work, life, and caregiving. This should help you decide what action you want to take next. Now, let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's deep dive. We're tackling this fascinating concept called harmonic potential.
I'm excited to dig into this.
Me too. We've got excerpts from a text by that same name, harmonic potential. And let me tell you, it's really got me thinking.
It's a really unique approach.
It is. It's like it pulls from these ancient philosophies, but also blends in cutting-edge ideas. And it all comes together to address, well, life.
It's definitely relevant to the challenges we face in the modern world.
Exactly. So that's what we're going to explore today. What exactly is harmonic potential? Where did this idea come from? And how can we actually use it? And I'm especially interested in how it applies to things like caregiving and the workplace, those areas where things can feel really out of balance.
Yeah, those are great areas to focus on. The source material actually dives right into that. It points to three major challenges of modern life that harmonic potential aims to address.
3 challenges. Okay, I'm all ears. Lay 'em on me.
The first one is fragmentation. That feeling of being pulled in a million directions, trying to manage work, family, relationships, personal goals.
Oh, tell me about it. I feel like I'm constantly switching hats and never fully present in any one area.
Yeah, and the source material makes a really good point about how this fragmentation is especially intense for caregivers. You're always responding to the needs of others, often unpredictable needs, while trying to maintain some semblance of a life for yourself.
It's like you're always on, right?
Yeah.
Never a moment to really switch off.
Exactly. And then the second challenge is misalignment. This is when we might achieve some outward success, the career, the house, all the things we thought we wanted, but there's still this feeling of emptiness inside.
I've heard that described as arriving at the destination, but realizing you're on the wrong bus. That feeling of, is this all there is?
Yeah.
Even when you've made it.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. And the source emphasizes how this feeling of misalignment can be amplified in demanding work environments, places where the focus is all on external achievement, not so much on genuine fulfillment.
I can see how that would happen. It's like you're on this treadmill running and running, but you're not actually going anywhere you want to go.
Exactly. And then the third challenge, and this is a big one, is burnout. We push ourselves too hard for too long without enough rest or support, and eventually something's got to give.
Burnout is so real, and I feel like it's almost become an epidemic. I think everyone I know is at least a little bit burned out these days.
It's definitely a widespread issue.
Yeah.
And the source makes it clear that both caregivers and those in high-pressure jobs are at a real risk for burnout. Exhaustion, cynicism, that feeling of not accomplishing anything, it all adds up.
Wow, you've just described my life for the past year. Fragmentation, misalignment, burnout. These are some heavy hitters, but this harmonic potential thing, this is supposed to help with all that, right?
That's the idea. It's a framework, a way of navigating these challenges and creating a life that feels more balanced, meaningful, and honestly, just more sustainable.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. But tell me, where did this whole concept come from? I mean, harmonic potential? It sounds pretty new agey to me.
You might be surprised to hear this, but its roots actually go way back. It draws inspiration from some ancient philosophies and combines those with some pretty cool modern ideas.
Ancient philosophies.
Yep.
Okay, now I'm really interested. Tell me more. What are we talking about here?
Well, they start by discussing this ancient Greek idea of eudaimonia. It's often translated as human flourishing.
Eudaimonia. It sounds pretty intense.
It's a pretty big concept. It's about living in alignment with your virtues, striving for excellence, and cultivating a life of purpose, a life of meaning.
So it's not just about being happy. It's about living a life that feels truly fulfilling.
Exactly. And the source suggests that this idea of eudaimonia is actually a foundation for harmonic potential. It's about finding that sweet spot where you're thriving individually, but also contributing to something larger than yourself.
Okay, now I'm starting to see how this could be like an antidote to that misalignment we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. And then they bring in Taoism with its focus on wu-wei, effortless action.
Effortless action. Sign me up.
Yep.
I could definitely use some of that in my life.
Right. It's this idea that when we're in sync with the natural flow of life, when we let go of forcing and striving, we actually achieve a state of greater ease and effectiveness.
It's like working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Finding that flow where things just fall into place.
Exactly. And that's something that harmonic potential really emphasizes. Finding a rhythm that works for you, not constantly pushing yourself to the limit.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What other ancient wisdom is woven into this tapestry of harmonic potential?
Well, they also touch on Stoicism. It's about cultivating this inner strength and resilience so you can weather the ups and downs of life with grace and, well, a sense of peace.
Finding that inner peace amidst the chaos. Now, that's something I think we could all benefit from.
Right. And Stoicism really focuses on what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, how we respond to things, and letting go of the things we can't control.
That sounds incredibly relevant to caregiving. You know, you can't control everything that happens, but you can control how you react to it.
Exactly. And harmonic potential uses this idea of inner resilience as a key to dealing with the challenges that modern life throws at us.
Okay, so we've got ancient Greece, Taoism, Stoicism, all these amazing philosophies that are still relevant today.
Yeah.
Anything else in the historical mix?
Yes. The source material brings up a more recent example, the Japanese concept of ikigai.
Oh, ikigai. I've heard of that. Isn't it about finding your purpose?
It is. It's often translated as reason for being, and it's about finding that intersection between what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for.
It's like that Venn diagram, right, where all the circles overlap in the middle.
Exactly. And ikigai is a great example of how harmonic potential draws on both Eastern and Western traditions. It's about integrating all these different aspects of ourselves and our lives to create a sense of wholeness, a sense of purpose.
I love that. It's like all these threads from history are being woven together to create this beautiful tapestry of harmonic potential.
It really is fascinating to see how it all comes together. But it's not just ancient wisdom at play. Harmonic potential also brings in some really insightful modern ideas. They talk about things like positive psychology, systems thinking, human-centered design, and even the current conversation around burnout culture.
Whoa, that's a lot to unpack. Where do we even begin with all of that?
Let's start with positive psychology, which really emerged in the late 20th century. It's all about studying what makes people thrive. Researchers like Martin Seligman and Mish Csikszentmihalyi, they've done some amazing work exploring concepts like flow, gratitude, intrinsic motivation.
I feel like we hear about those things a lot these days. So how do they connect to harmonic potential?
Well, the source material explains how harmonic potential takes those positive psychology concepts and makes them practical. It weaves them into this framework for creating a more fulfilling life. For example, Csikszentmihalyi's work on flow states. It's all about finding that sweet spot where your skills are perfectly matched to the challenge and you just get completely lost in what you're doing.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's like time disappears and you're just completely present and engaged.
Exactly. And harmonic potential argues that cultivating those flow states in our work, our hobbies, even our relationships, it's essential for both productivity and happiness.
So it's not just about grinding it out. It's about finding those pockets of joy and engagement that make it all feel worthwhile.
Precisely. And then there's systems thinking, which is all about seeing the interconnectedness of things, how everything is related.
So how does that apply to our lives?
It helps us understand that our lives aren't just a bunch of separate compartments. Our work, our relationships, our health, our personal growth, it's all interconnected.
Right, so what happens in one area can have a ripple effect on all the others.
Exactly. And harmonic potential encourages us to look at our lives holistically. We can't truly thrive in one area if we're neglecting the others.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance, that integration across all areas of life.
Exactly. And then there's human-centered design, which is all about putting the user at the heart of the design process.
Okay, so how does that relate to harmonic potential?
Well, harmonic potential is all about being adaptable. It evolves with the individual, just like good design evolves based on feedback from the user.
So it's not about following some rigid set of rules. It's about finding what works for you.
Exactly. And recognizing that our needs and priorities are going to change over time, harmonic potential is a framework that can grow and adapt with us.
I like that. It takes the pressure off of having to have it all figured out right now.
Exactly. And lastly, harmonic potential acknowledges this very real phenomenon, burnout culture.
Burnout culture is definitely a thing. It's like we're constantly bombarded with messages about hustling, grinding, never slowing down.
It's exhausting, right? And harmonic potential offers an alternative to that. It's about finding a sustainable pace, prioritizing well-being, and creating a life that feels both fulfilling and sustainable.
It's about thriving, not just surviving.
Exactly. And that's what makes harmonic potential so relevant. It's a framework that's designed for the challenges of the modern world, helping us create lives that feel aligned with our values and aspirations.
I'm really starting to get a feel for the power of this concept. We've talked about the historical foundations, the modern influences. But what exactly makes harmonic potential different from all the other self-help philosophies out there?
That's a great question. And the source material highlights three key innovations that really set harmonic potential apart. Want to hear them?
Definitely. Give me the inside scoop.
First, there's the idea of dynamic balance. Instead of striving for some rigid, static idea of balance, harmonic potential recognizes that balance is fluid. It's always changing.
So it's not about finding that perfect equilibrium where everything stays the same. It's about constantly adapting and adjusting to the ebb and flow of life.
Exactly. And this is especially important in roles like caregiving, where the needs of others are constantly in flux. You have to be able to roll with the punches.
That's the truth. Life, especially with kids or aging parents, anyone you're caring for, it's anything but predictable.
Exactly. The second key innovation is actionable alignment. It's not enough to just think about these concepts. You have to actually put them into practice.
So it's not just a philosophy, it's actually a set of tools, strategies that you can use to create real change in your life.
Exactly. Harmonic potential doesn't just tell you what to do, it shows you how. It gives you practical guidance on aligning your actions with your values, managing your energy, creating a life that feels meaningful and sustainable.
Okay, now we're talking. This is starting to sound really useful. What's the third innovation?
The third innovation is the integration of joy and greatness. Harmonic potential understands that achieving your full potential shouldn't be a grim, joyless pursuit.
Yes, it's about finding the joy in the journey, not just grinding it out until you reach some arbitrary finish line.
Exactly. It's about celebrating the wins, savoring the moments of connection, cultivating a sense of gratitude for all the good stuff.
This is all starting to sound pretty amazing, but before we get too carried away, I want to make sure I'm understanding how all the pieces fit together. You know, we talked about all those historical and modern influences. How does harmonic potential actually build on all those concepts?
That's a great question. And the answer is integration harmonic potential takes these age-old wisdom traditions and blends them with the latest insights from psychology, design, even business. It's like a fusion of the best ideas from across time and disciplines.
Okay, give me an example. How does it actually blend the ancient with the modern?
Well, for example, it takes that ancient idea of eudaimonia, human flourishing, and it combines it with the actionable insights of positive psychology. So you have this really deep philosophical foundation, but also these practical tools and strategies for creating a life of purpose and meaning.
I like that. Taking the best of both worlds and creating something entirely new.
Exactly. And it also connects the Japanese concept of ikigai, finding your purpose, with the modern reality of work-life integration. It's about aligning your passions and skills with your work and life in a way that feels authentic and sustainable.
It's about finding that sweet spot where your work and your life actually complement each other, where they both contribute to your sense of purpose and fulfillment.
Precisely. And remember Csikszentmihalyi's flow state we talked about? Well, harmonic potential takes that idea of flow and puts it within this larger context of systems thinking. It recognizes that achieving flow in one area of your life can have a ripple effect throughout your whole system.
So it's not just about those isolated moments of flow. It's about creating a life where flow is woven into the fabric of your being.
You got it.
Okay, so we've covered the historical influences, the modern influences, the key innovations, and how it all fits together. But why is this framework so important now? What makes harmonic potential so relevant today?
Well, the world's getting more and more complex, right? People are juggling more than ever. The lines between work and life are blurring, and the pressure to achieve is constant harmonic potential. offers a way to navigate all of that, to create a life of balance and fulfillment amidst the chaos.
It's like a compass for our times.
That's a great way to put it. And with burnout on the rise, Harmonic Potential's emphasis on sustainable growth is more important than ever. It's a much-needed alternative to the hustle culture that's leaving so many people depleted and disillusioned.
It's about finding a way to thrive over the long haul, not just burning brightly and then fizzling out.
Exactly. And finally, Harmonic Potential speaks to this deep desire that so many people feel, the desire to make a real difference, to have a positive impact. It's not just about achieving success for its own sake. It's about using your unique talents to contribute to something larger than yourself.
It's about finding that point where your personal fulfillment intersects with your contribution to the world. This has been an amazing overview. We've just scratched the surface of harmonic potential, but I'm already seeing how it applies to so many different areas of life. But how do we actually put all this into practice? Where do we even begin?
That is the million-dollar question, and it's one that we'll be exploring in more detail in the next part of our deep dive. But I can give you a little sneak peek.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me those action steps.
The first step is to really reflect on what truly matters to you. What are your core values? What lights you up? What kind of impact do you want to have on the world?
It's about getting back in touch with that inner compass, that sense of what truly resonates with your soul.
Exactly. Once you have a clearer picture of what matters most, then you can start aligning your actions with those values. That can mean anything from choosing a career path that feels meaningful, to making time for activities that nourish you, to setting boundaries in relationships that drain your energy.
So it's about being more intentional with our choices,
Mm-hmm.
not just going through life on autopilot.
Exactly. And remember, this is a journey, not a destination. Harmonic Potential is a framework to guide you along the way, helping you create a life that feels both fulfilling and sustainable.
I love that. This is all making so much sense. I can't wait to learn more about how to actually apply these principles to my own life, especially as a caregiver and someone who's just trying to juggle all the demands of a busy life.
Well, you're in the right place. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll be getting into specific strategies for cultivating that dynamic balance, aligning your actions with your values, and even integrating more joy into every aspect of your life.
This is going to be good. Be sure to join us for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the world of harmonic potential and discover how you can unlock your own unique potential for a more balanced, joyful, and fulfilling life.
Welcome back to our deep dive into harmonic potential. Last time we were talking about how this concept is rooted in some pretty old philosophies, but also includes modern research and ideas.
All right, and then I'm ready to get practical here. Like, how can we use this framework to actually make our lives better? Real strategies, not just, abstract concepts.
One of the most powerful things about harmonic potential is the focus on aligning your actions with your values. It's about figuring out what really matters to you and then making choices that reflect those values in your everyday life.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, but how do you actually figure out what your values are? Sometimes I can't even decide what I want for dinner, let alone, like, my core values.
That's a great point. It can be tricky to put your finger on your values, especially when the world is constantly telling you what you should want and how you should live. But a good starting point is to think about times when you felt truly alive, really engaged, like your most authentic self. What were you doing? Who were you with? What values were showing up in those moments?
That's interesting. It's not about some list of values. It's about those moments where you felt most in tune with yourself.
Exactly. And once you start to see those moments and the values they represent, you can start asking yourself, how can I bring more of that into my life? How can I make choices that line up with what really matters to me, even with all the demands and distractions?
So it's not just about the big life choices like your career or relationships. It's about those little decisions every day where you have a chance to act in a way that reflects your values.
Absolutely. Let's say you're a caregiver and you're feeling completely overwhelmed, exhausted. One of your core values might be compassion. So how can you express that value even when you're running on empty?
That's tough.
Yeah,
It's hard to be compassionate when you feel depleted yourself.
right. But maybe it's about offering yourself that same compassion you would give to someone you love. Maybe it's about giving yourself permission to rest, to set boundaries, to ask for help. Those actions are all about self-compassion, which ultimately comes from that core value of compassion.
I like that. It's a different way of looking at it. It's not about being perfect. It's about making choices that reflect your values, even when it's hard.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important principle of harmonic potential, which is embracing dynamic balance.
We touched on that in the last part, but I'd love to hear more about what it means to embrace dynamic balance, especially when our lives are so busy and chaotic.
It's about letting go of this idea that balance is some fixed state, like some perfect equilibrium that you reach and then you just maintain. Balance is fluid, it's always changing, it's this constant process of adapting.
That makes sense. Life is rarely static, especially if you're a caregiver or anyone in a demanding job. It's like you're always trying to keep all these plates spinning.
Exactly. And if you're holding on to this rigid idea of balance, you're going to feel like you're failing all the time because things are always going to shift. But if you embrace the idea that balance is dynamic, it's about constantly adjusting, then you can find a rhythm that actually works for you.
So instead of trying to control everything, it's more about learning to ride the waves.
Exactly. It's about paying attention to your energy levels, your needs, your priorities, and adjusting your actions based on those things. Maybe one week you have a ton of deadlines at work, so your balance tips more towards your professional life. The next week, your kid gets sick, and you have to shift your focus to caregiving.
Right, it's about being flexible, not trying to force things into a box.
Exactly. The source material uses this really helpful analogy. It says to imagine your life as a mobile with all the different areas, work, family, relationships, personal growth, health, they're all represented. Each one has its own weight, and the whole thing is constantly moving and adjusting as those weights change.
I love that. It's so much more realistic than trying to keep everything perfectly balanced all the time.
Right. And the cool thing about a mobile is that even though it's constantly in motion, it's still a beautiful work of art. And that's what we're aiming for in our lives, a dynamic balance where everything is in harmony, even though it's always shifting.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get this dynamic balance thing, but how do you actually put it into practice? What are some strategies for finding that rhythm in the midst of all the chaos?
A really important strategy is being mindful of your energy levels. Pay attention to when you feel energized and when you feel drained. And then try to structure your day, your whole life even, in a way that respects those natural cycles.
So like if you're a morning person, you might schedule your most important tasks for the morning when you have more energy. And if you know you tend to hit a slump in the afternoon, you might schedule some downtime for yourself then.
Exactly. It's also about noticing how different activities impact your energy. Maybe spending time in nature energizes you, but being in crowded places really drains you. Maybe certain types of work are really engaging, and others make you feel totally depleted.
So it's about making choices that are in sync with your energy levels, not just pushing through when you're exhausted.
Right, and it's also about being willing to adjust your plans when you need to. Life is full of surprises, and sometimes things happen that throw off our carefully crafted schedules.
Oh, tell me about it. Especially as a caregiver, you have to be ready for anything.
Exactly. So it's about being flexible, knowing that it's okay to say no, to delegate, to ask for help, even to adjust your expectations.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. It's so easy to get caught up in all the shoulds and have-tos. But sometimes the most balanced choice is just letting go of what's not working.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another key part of harmonic potential, which is integrating joy and greatness. It's about understanding that achieving your full potential shouldn't be this grim, joyless pursuit. It's about finding ways to bring joy and meaning into everything you do.
That sounds so much better than the whole grind-it-out mentality that's so popular these days.
Right. Joy is not a reward for achieving something. It's actually essential to the process itself.
I love that. But how do you bring more joy into your life when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed?
One really powerful way is to cultivate a sense of gratitude. Take some time each day to appreciate the good things, big or small. A cup of coffee in the morning, connecting with someone you love, even just noticing something beautiful in nature.
It's about shifting your perspective, focusing on what's present instead of what's missing.
Exactly. And it's also about making time for the things that bring you joy, even if it's just for a few minutes each day. What are those things for you? What makes you feel alive?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's easy to forget about those things when you're caught up in the daily grind.
I know, right? So make a list of those things, those joy sparkers, and schedule them into your week, just like you would any other important appointment.
That's a great idea. It's about taking joy seriously, recognizing that it's not a luxury, it's a necessity.
Exactly. And don't forget about play. Making time for things that are just pure fun is essential for staying balanced and preventing burnout. Play helps us tap into our creativity, to connect with our inner child, to let go of stress.
So it's not just about working hard and being responsible. It's also about being silly, being spontaneous, having fun.
Right. And play doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as simple as playing a game with your kids, dancing to your favorite music, or getting out in nature.
Okay, this is all starting to come together. Aligning actions with values, embracing dynamic balance, finding joy in the everyday. These are all key parts of harmonic potential. But there's one more piece I want to touch on before we wrap up this part. Remember how we were talking about actionable alignment?
Yes, bridging that gap between thinking and doing, between what we want and how we actually behave.
Exactly. So let's get into that. What are some things people can actually do to start living in a way that aligns with harmonic potential?
One practical thing is to create a personal mission statement. It's a short statement that captures your core values, your passions, your vision for the future. It's like a guiding principle for your life.
Okay, a personal mission statement. I like that, but how do you write one?
It goes back to reflecting on those moments when you felt your most authentic self. What values were present in those moments? What kind of impact do you want to have? What do you want your legacy to be? Once you have a clearer sense of those things, you can start to craft a statement that captures your vision for your life.
So it's not about some big, lofty goal. It's about figuring out what really matters and expressing it in a way that can guide your actions.
Exactly. And once you have that statement, you can use it as a touchstone for decision making. When you're faced with a choice, ask yourself, does this align with my mission? Does it move me closer to my goals? Does it reflect my values?
That's a really helpful tool for making choices that feel true to you.
It is. Another helpful tool is the joy list, which we touched on earlier. Just a simple list of things that bring you joy and energy. The key is to actually make time for those things, even if it's just for a few minutes a day.
I love that. It's a reminder to prioritize the things that make life good, the things that nourish our souls.
Right. It's not about being selfish. It's about recognizing that when you take care of yourself, when you make time for joy, you're actually better able to show up for others, to do your best work, to make a difference in the world.
This is all making so much sense. Aligning actions with values, embracing dynamic balance, finding joy in the everyday. It's like a recipe for a more fulfilling and sustainable life.
It really is. And it's important to remember it's a journey, not a destination. There will be times when you feel more balanced and aligned than others, times when you fall back into old patterns. But the key is to keep coming back to these principles, keep practicing, keep refining your approach.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. Harmonic potential is about finding a rhythm that works for you, a way to move through life's ups and downs with grace and resilience. It's about creating a life that feels authentic and joyful, a life that aligns with your values and allows you to share your unique gifts with the world.
This has been such an inspiring exploration of harmonic potential, but I know we've just scratched the surface. What can listeners look forward to in Part 3?
In Part 3, we'll explore how to apply these principles to specific areas of life, like caregiving and the workplace. We'll also talk about creating a harmonic potential culture in our communities and in the world.
This is going to be good. Join us for Part 3 as we continue our deep dive into the world of harmonic potential. Welcome back. It feels like we've been on quite the journey with harmonic potential. We've explored the philosophy behind it, the history, and even some really practical ways to find more balance and joy in our lives.
Yeah, it's been quite a deep dive. And in this final part, we're going to bring it all together and look at how these principles can actually work in real life. Specifically, we'll focus on caregiving and the workplace, two areas where the demands of modern life can feel really intense.
There are two big parts of life where it can be really tough to find that harmony we've been talking about. So let's start with caregiving. What does harmonic potential look like for someone who's in that role?
Well, as we've talked about, caregiving can take so much out of you, physically and emotionally. And it's easy to get lost in that, to put your own needs aside for the person you're caring for.
It's true. It's like you're pouring all your energy out and there's nothing left for you.
That's where harmonic potential comes in. It reminds us that it doesn't have to be that way. It encourages caregivers to make their own well-being a priority, not as a luxury, but as a necessity.
Because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. You have to put your own oxygen mask on first, like they say on airplanes. It's about recognizing that self-care isn't selfish, it's actually an act of love. When you're taking care of yourself, you're better able to care for others.
So how can caregivers use harmonic potential in their lives? What are some specific things they can do?
It starts with aligning your actions with your values, like we talked about. As a caregiver, you're making choices all the time. What to prioritize, how to handle those difficult situations, how to manage your time and energy.
And it's so easy to just react to what's right in front of you, to get caught up in the urgency of it all.
Harmonic potential asks you to pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, what really matters to me in this role? What values do I want to embody as a caregiver?
That's such a good question. When you're clear about your values, it makes it easier to make choices that feel right, even when things are hard.
Exactly. And that might mean setting boundaries, asking for help, delegating some of the tasks. It might mean choosing to focus on those moments of joy and connection with the person you're caring for, even when there are challenges.
Right? It's about bringing intention to the role, not just going through the motions.
And remember the concept of dynamic balance. That's especially important for caregivers. Your lives can be so unpredictable.
It's like trying to balance on a moving train. You're constantly having to adjust.
And harmonic potential encourages us to embrace that, to let go of trying to control everything and just find a rhythm that works.
So it's not about doing it all. It's about knowing your limits,
Yeah.
asking for support, and giving yourself permission to take care of yourself.
It's about finding that balance between caring for the person you're responsible for and caring for yourself.
And they can look different for everyone. There's no one right way to do it.
Right. Harmonic potential isn't a list of rules. It's a framework you can adapt to your own needs and circumstances.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We've talked about caregiving. Now, what about the workplace? How does harmonic potential fit into that part of our lives?
Well, there's been a shift in how we think about work, right? It used to be all about work-life balance, but now it's more about work-life integration.
Yeah, there's so much overlap these days. It's not like you can just shut work off when you leave the office.
And harmonic potential acknowledges that. It encourages us to see how work can actually make our lives better instead of being something that just drains us.
So it's about making work a source of joy and fulfillment, not just a means to an end.
Exactly. And that starts with finding work that aligns with what you value, what you're passionate about, work that feels meaningful.
I think that's what a lot of people are searching for, to feel like their work has purpose.
Harmonic potential reminds us that we don't have to settle for work that makes us feel drained and uninspired. We can create a work life that feels good.
But how do you actually do that? I mean, in today's world, it's not always easy to find a job that's both meaningful and pays the bills.
Well, first you have to get clear about what you value, what you're good at, and what you love doing. What kind of work would make you feel energized? What kind of impact do you want to have? Once you know what you're looking for, you can start exploring your options and make a plan to move toward a more fulfilling career.
So it's about being proactive, not just waiting for the perfect job to magically appear.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be this huge change all at once. You can start by making small changes in your current job. Maybe volunteer for a project that excites you, or take on a new challenge that helps you grow.
Those little steps can make a big difference over time.
And remember, you can bring those harmonic potential principles into your workplace even if you're not in your dream job yet. You can still create purpose and meaning by focusing on the good stuff, by connecting with your colleagues, by finding ways to make a difference, even if it's in small ways.
It's about finding those little pockets of joy and fulfillment right now, not waiting for everything to be perfect.
And don't forget about taking care of yourself at work. Setting boundaries, taking breaks, prioritizing self-care. Those are all essential to prevent burnout and make sure you can keep going.
That's so important, especially in a world where we're often expected to be on all the time.
Harmonic potential reminds us that there's another way. We can create a different kind of work experience, one that respects our well-being and feels good.
And hopefully that can spread and inspire others to do the same, to create a more harmonic potential kind of work culture.
Exactly. That's a really important point. Harmonic potential isn't just about personal growth. It's also about creating a world where people feel valued and supported, where they can thrive.
It's about creating a ripple effect of balance and joy.
And it starts with each of us, making choices that align with our values, taking care of ourselves, and finding ways to make our lives more meaningful.
And then sharing that with others, encouraging them to do the same.
Right, we're all connected, and the choices we make, the actions we take, can help create a more harmonious world.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive into harmonic potential. It feels like I have so many new tools and ideas for dealing with life's challenges and creating a life that feels really authentic.
I'm so glad to hear that. And remember, it's a journey. Keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep believing in your own power to create a more fulfilling and harmonious life.
Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We hope this exploration of harmonic potential has inspired you to discover your own potential and create a life that reflects your values, your passions, and your purpose.
It's been a pleasure.